God's chosen ones. God is sending help through someone you've never met. Have you ever felt like your prayers are getting lost in the silence? Do you ever wonder why help never comes from the people you expect? What if I told you that your breakthrough is already in motion? Through someone you've never even met. Chosen one, this isn't just a video, this is a divine interruption. Right now, while you're sitting in what feels like another ordinary moment, something supernatural is shifting. Not in the place you are watching, not through the people you hoped would come through, no. It's happening in the unseen. This word didn't find you by chance, you were summoned. Let me take you back. Imagine being Joseph, a young dreamer, full of vision, betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, then sold as a slave. He thought the pain came from people he trusted. But what he didn't know was, Pharaoh's palace would one day call his name. Not through a brother, not through family, but through a stranger holding a key to his release. Chosen one, what if the pit wasn't punishment, but positioning? You see, you've been waiting for help to come from your circle, but your circle doesn't have the clearance. Your name is being whispered in rooms you've never stepped into. Why? Because God is sending help through a stranger, someone who's been stirred in the spirit, someone who doesn't know your face but carries your solution. Now pause. Feel this. The people who ignored your cry weren't meant to carry your miracle. That's why they couldn't hear you. The silence was divine insulation, not rejection. So here's the mystery. What if everything you've suffered has been orchestrated to align you with someone heaven just woke up last night, with your name burning on their soul? Yes, they're real, and they're coming. Maybe they're pacing right now, unable to explain the urge to call a number, fund a vision, open a door they didn't even know existed. Not for them, but for you. This is not coincidence. This is choreography. And right before your story changes, it gets eerily quiet. People withdraw, things stall. You start questioning your value. That's not failure, that's transition. The silence before the shift. So, let me ask you, when help arrives in a package you weren't expecting, will you recognize it? Or will you miss the answer because it didn't look like your old idea of a blessing? Chosen one, listen carefully. This video is not just encouragement, it's a prophetic confirmation. Help is already moving in your direction, and when it arrives, you won't need to chase it. It will recognize you, because it was sent for you. Now breathe. Something holy has begun. Let's go deeper. Why does it feel like everyone else is moving forward, but you're stuck in the same place? Why do people keep leaving your life just when you start to trust them? Why does your calling feel like a curse more than a gift? Chosen one, what you call rejection, heaven calls redirection. Let me tell you a story. There was a boy named David, the youngest of 8 sons. While his brothers were being paraded in front of the prophet Samuel as potential kings, David was left in the fields. Forgotten, dirty, smelling of sheep. No one even thought to call his name, but God did. 1 Samuel 16:7 says, "Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." While the family dismissed David, heaven was watching him in secret, tuning his spirit, testing his heart. Why? Because God doesn't promote popularity, He promotes preparation. And you, chosen one, are in your preparation season. Not punishment, preparation. Let's break the illusion. You thought the loneliness meant you were forgotten. You thought the silence meant you were off track. You thought the pain meant God left the room. But in reality, all of it was divine. Being chosen doesn't come with applause. It comes with separation. And separation feels like suffering when you don't understand the strategy behind it. Do you remember Joseph? Betrayed by his own blood, locked in a pit, sold into slavery, imprisoned for years, not because he failed, but because he was marked. Marked by favor, marked by purpose, marked by a dream heaven wouldn't let die. Genesis 50:20 says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." What if what been breaking you was actually building you? Let me ask you something heavy. What if your heartbreak was heaven's way of making sure your spirit would never settle for average? What if that closed door was actually divine protection from a destiny too small for your anointing? You haven't been delayed, you've been set apart. And being set apart is never glamorous. It looks like empty inboxes, lonely nights, rooms that grow silent when you enter, and prayers that seem to bounce back from the ceiling. But all of that, chosen one, is proof. Proof that heaven has its eyes on you. Let me take you deeper. When Moses fled Egypt, he thought he was running from failure. He thought he'd blown his chance. But in the wilderness, with no crowd, no title, no influence, God called his name through a burning bush, alone, unseen, undervalued. Why? Because heaven doesn't need an audience to anoint you. Moses was set apart in secret before he ever stood before Pharaoh. And so are you. This is your wilderness. But wilderness is sacred. It's where clarity replaces noise. It's where calling becomes conviction. It's where faith is no longer a concept, but the breath in your lungs. Chosen one, you've been crying out for evidence of your purpose, and the pain you've endured is the evidence. God doesn't waste suffering. He shapes leaders with it. He refines prophets through it. He prepares world changers in the fire of isolation. Here's the shift. You are not the one God forgot. You are the one God is hiding. And when heaven hides you, it's not rejection, it's reservation, reserved for higher ground, reserved for an assignment that demands depth, not popularity, reserved for a moment so precise, God couldn't risk you blending in with the wrong crowd. Let this sink in. The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Psalm 118:22. That's not poetry. That's prophecy. They didn't see you coming, but God did. You were never overlooked. You were hand-picked. And when the time comes, when the appointed person, the divine connector, the unexpected helper shows up, you'll realize something. Every tear had purpose. Every betrayal had instruction. Every delay had precision. So what does all this mean for you right now? It means you don't need to chase affirmation. You don't need to audition for love. You don't need to explain your silence, your standards, or your solitude. Because you are not being punished, you are being positioned. And when you look back, when the doors open, when the voices shift from mocking to marveling, when the stranger steps in with the answer to a prayer you never spoke out loud, you will understand. You're not forgotten. You're being set apart. You're not lost. You're being prepared. You're not overlooked. You're God's chosen one. Now breathe. The shift has already begun. Let's keep going. It gets deeper from here. Have you ever felt humiliated for simply being honest about your dreams? Have you ever been mocked for choosing silence over spectacle? Have you ever wondered why your loyalty was met with laughter, not love? Chosen one, what if I told you that their rejection wasn't the problem, it was the prophecy? Let's go back, not to your past, to a prison cell in ancient Egypt. There, in the darkness, sat a man named Joseph, falsely accused, forgotten by the very people he helped. Years before, he had shared a dream with his brothers, a dream God gave him, and for that they hated him, not because he was wrong, but because they couldn't see what was right about him. They mocked him, they plotted against him, they threw him into a pit, but that pit wasn't a grave, it was a gateway, because what they meant for evil, God used for elevation. Genesis 50:20 makes it plain. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. Not just for Joseph, but for the saving of many. So, let's get honest. You've been laughed at for being different. They labeled your silence as weakness, your boundaries as arrogance, your standards as unrealistic. They didn't know they were mocking the anointing. Joe, because when you're chosen, the oil on your life makes people uncomfortable, especially those still stuck in their comfort zones. Now, listen closely. Let me take you into another story, this one not from scripture, but from Hollywood. Chadwick Boseman. Before he was King T'Challa, before Black Panther became a cultural phenomenon, Chadwick was quietly fighting a battle no one saw: colon cancer. In secret, while the world judged his weight loss, made jokes, whispered rumors, he was filming scene after scene, walking through pain with a kind of strength most men only pray for. He didn't owe the world an explanation. Because his calling was louder than the critics, he knew something sacred. Your mission doesn't stop just because the world misunderstands your process. Chosen one. What if I told you that your mockery is actually your mark? Jesus said in Matthew 5:11, "Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me." Let that sink in. The ridicule isn't random, it's recognition. Let's explore deeper. Frida Kahlo, the iconic Mexican painter, her work, too raw, too surreal, too painful. Critics called it grotesque. She painted her suffering unapologetically, her brokenness, her physical pain, her soul stitched into canvas. And yet, today her grotesque is exhibited in the world's most elite museums. Why? Because truth always outlives mockery. And your truth, the pain you carry, it's not weakness, it's weight, holy weight. Proof that you survived what others thought would bury you. Let's pause here. Ask yourself this. What if every insult you've endured was heaven's way of carving out the space where your purpose would sit? What if their disbelief was the exact friction required to sharpen your discernment? The reason they laughed wasn't because you were wrong. It was because they couldn't recognize what God whispered to you in secret. Let me say that again, for your soul this time. They couldn't mock what they didn't first feel threatened by. Now here comes the shift, the emotional peak, the moment your heart has to decide. Are you still wounded by their words, or are you ready to wear them as a badge of distinction? Because every time they said, "You're doing too much," what they really meant was, "You're rising beyond what we understand." Every time they rolled their eyes when you spoke about your vision, they didn't see delusion, they saw destiny in disguise. And it terrified them. Chosen one. They mocked Noah until the rain came. They laughed at David until Goliath fell. They dismissed Jesus until he rose. You are in divine company. This level of ridicule? It's a rite of passage, because heaven doesn't send oil to the crowd, it sends oil to the consecrated, and the most powerful oil is pressed through pain. Let me take you to one more moment, a quiet one, unseen by the world but echoed in eternity. A little boy standing in front of a casting agent. He's being offered a role on a TV show, but he turns it down, not because he's arrogant, but because the role disrespects his integrity. That boy, Chadwick Boseman again, He chose principle over platform, and years later, the world watched him become a king, not just on screen, but in spirit. Chosen one, the very things you've sacrificed, your peace, your comfort, your pride, are the very things that have made you ready. Let's bring this home. You've been walking through fire. You've been misunderstood, misjudged, mislabeled. But here's the truth. God hides his fiercest warriors in plain sight. While they're laughing, you're loading. While they're doubting, you're becoming. You weren't walking through pain for pity, you were walking through it for power. Let me ask you this, and I want you to hold it close. What if the very thing that broke your heart was the tool God used to break open your destiny? You didn't survive to explain yourself. You survived to lead, to build, to anoint. You are not weak. You are not invisible. You are not a mistake. You are the storm they thought would never rise again, the seed that didn't just survive the drought, but bloomed in spite of it. So let the laughter come. Let the critics scoff. Let the silence linger, because chosen one, Vetthung is the evidence, the bruises are the testimony, the scars are the seal. You didn't imagine it, you didn't fake it, you didn't exaggerate it, you lived it. And Vetthung is the proof that you have truly lived. What if the help you've been praying for doesn't even know your name yet? What if your miracle is already in motion, just not through the people you expected? What if your breakthrough is walking toward you in the form of a stranger? Chosen one, you've cried in silence. You've pleaded behind closed doors. You've prayed the kind of prayers that only the midnight hours understand. Raw, trembling, whispered between sobs and long sighs. But heaven heard, and heaven answered. Just not in the way you imagined. You were looking to your circle, but your circle was never meant to carry what's coming. You expected it to come from someone familiar, but familiar doesn't always mean faithful. And so now, right in this very moment, someone you've never met is thinking of you without even knowing why. Let me show you how this has happened before. And step into the book of Ruth. She was a widow, a foreigner, grieving and displaced. Everything she had known, gone. Her husband, dead. Her culture, behind her. Her future, unclear. But Ruth chose loyalty. She followed her mother-in-law Naomi back to Bethlehem, not knowing what waited for her there. No job, no stability, no guarantee, just faith. Quiet, unwavering faith. And then she stepped into Boaz's field. Boaz wasn't looking for her. He didn't wake up that morning expecting to meet the woman who would forever change the lineage of Israel. But Ruth's obedience collided with Boaz's provision, and something divine exploded in the unseen. She didn't need to know him. She only needed to be in position. What does that mean for you? It means your job isn't to chase the person. Your job is to stay obedient, even when the soil feels dry, even when the field looks empty, because the stranger who carries your answer is already being stirred. They're sensing a nudge, a whisper, a push they can't explain. They don't know your face, but your spirit is on their heart. Chosen one, let this hit your soul. You've been praying for help, and someone else has been feeling the urge to help. They just don't know it's for you yet. Isn't that what divine timing looks like? Isaiah 65:24 says, "Before they call, I will answer. While they are still speaking, I will hear." That's not poetry. That's a blueprint, a behind-the-scenes reality of how heaven works. Let's shift from ancient fields to the dusty paths of American history. Harriet Tubman, a woman born into slavery, abused, beaten, silenced. But in the quiet, she began to hear, not voices from her captors, but divine instructions, visions, prophetic dreams, directions that made no earthly sense, yet carried heavenly precision. And from those visions, she led over 70 people to freedom through the Underground Railroad. Now here's the thing. Most of the people she helped had never met her before she showed up. They didn't know her name, they didn't request her directly, but they were praying for freedom, and God heard. So he stirred a stranger, chosen one. Could this be your story? That while you were pleading for provision, someone else was being prompted to give. That while you were asking for an open door, someone else was standing near a locked one with the key in their pocket, and they're just now realizing that the key doesn't fit their door, it fits yours. Let's pause here. Breathe with me. Let your mind wander, not in fear, but in faith. What if the delay was not denial, but divine alignment? What if God didn't forget you? He was simply preparing them. And here's the twist. That person might not look the way you expect. They may not speak your spiritual language. They may not even understand why they feel compelled to help. But they're coming, because God doesn't need your approval to anoint someone to bless you. Let me give you this. When heaven sends help, it's not always in robes and halos. Sometimes it's in hoodies and quiet smiles. Sometimes it's in emails from unexpected names. Sometimes it's in awkward conversations that suddenly shift into divine connection. You have to stay spiritually awake. Because if you only look for help in the form you're used to, you'll miss the help God has already dispatched. This is your moment of reckoning. Will you have the faith to receive what doesn't come through familiar hands? Because here's the truth. They're already thinking about you. They just don't know it yet. Your name is in their dreams. Your project is on their heart. Your situation is in their journal. Your presence is haunting their thoughts. And they don't even know why. But you do. Because you've been praying. And God has been listening. And heaven has already started moving. Let me leave you with this. God is the master of divine appointments. He orchestrates intersections that make no earthly sense, but carry eternal weight. He positions people. He stirs their conscience. He reroutes their schedules. So don't be surprised when a stranger steps in and knows exactly what to say. Don't be shocked when favor falls in your lap through a connection you didn't pursue. And don't reject the unfamiliar. It might just be your answered prayer in disguise. Chosen one, help is coming. And it won't come wrapped in predictability. It will come clothed in purpose. You didn't miss it. You're not late. You're right on schedule, because God is already acting behind the scenes. And someone you've never met is already walking toward you with the answer you've been waiting for. Let's keep going. The revelation is just beginning. Have you ever wondered why strangers are drawn to you without explanation? Why certain doors open without you knocking? Why people say there's something about you but can't explain what that something is? Chosen one, that's not charisma. That's not coincidence. That's divine frequency. Yes, your soul emits a spiritual vibration, a signal that heaven responds to, and earth can't ignore. Every time you chose obedience over convenience, every time you showed kindness when it wasn't deserved, every time you whispered a prayer through your pain instead of letting bitterness win, you were tuning your frequency. You were broadcasting something holy, and now something is responding. Let me take you back to a moment, one of the most powerful intimate scenes in the Gospels. A woman walks into a room filled with men, religious, respected, powerful. She doesn't belong. They all know her past, but she doesn't come to speak, she comes to pour. She breaks open an alabaster jar, filled with expensive perfume, and with trembling hands she anoints the feet of Jesus. No words, no sermon, just worship. The fragrance fills the entire house. The men murmur, judging her. What a waste, they say, but Jesus defends her. He says in Mark 14:9, "Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her." Why? Because her act didn't come from performance, it came from frequency. She didn't speak, her spirit spoke. Chosen one, that's you. You've been releasing something into the atmosphere with your life, even when your lips were silent, and heaven has been listening. There's a law of the Spirit that many don't understand. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you're aligned for. And alignment isn't always loud. Sometimes it's forged in private, in pain, in the nights when no one saw you but God. Let's shift to a different battlefield. The hospitals of 19th century war-torn Europe. Florence Nightingale, a woman of high society, who walked away from comfort to serve the wounded during the Crimean War. They called her strange, they mocked her methods, but she didn't stop. Every night she walked through bloodied corridors holding a lantern, checking on soldiers, many of whom were forgotten by the world. But she didn't need recognition. Her spirit was what moved her, and that same spirit transformed the entire global standard of nursing care. Florence didn't need approval to be effective. She carried a frequency of compassion, of purpose, of divine assignment, and the world responded. So now, let me ask you something personal. What energy has your life been releasing? What fragrance has your obedience sent into the air? Because, chosen one, spiritual frequency is real and it's powerful. It's why the right people are drawn to you, even if they can't explain why. It's why open doors find you, even when you feel unqualified. It's why your name keeps coming up in rooms you've never entered, not because you forced it, but because your frequency preceded you. Now, lean in for this part. This is important. Many people confuse spiritual activity with striving. They think they have to fight, chase, manipulate, beg. But you don't have to chase what your spirit is already attracting. You don't have to scream to be seen. When you're aligned, your stillness is louder than noise. Divine frequency is the echo of heaven in your soul. It's what happens when your motives are pure, your heart is clean, and your life is in sync with God's timing. That's when help comes. Not when you force it, when you become ready for it. Let me give you a vision. There's someone across town, or across the world. They're not scrolling through social media looking for a cause to support. They're feeling something. A pull, a question, a stirring, and that stirring is connected to you. Your obedience has sent out a signal, a vibration their spirit is picking up, even if they don't have the words for it. This is not magic, this is spiritual law. Psalm 37:4 says, "Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart." But here's the deeper meaning. When your heart delights in God, your desires change. They align, they elevate, and in that alignment you begin attracting everything that matches heaven's plan for you. Not just people, but provision, favor, access, and answers. Let me take you to a turning point, a high note of this truth. You're not invisible. You're in alignment, and heaven doesn't miss frequencies. Your consistency has created resonance, your prayer life has built momentum, and now things are moving, even if you don't see it yet. Even if nothing has shifted on the outside, the vibration you've created in the spirit is shaking things loose. So, let me warn you, what's coming may not look familiar. It may not arrive in your timeline. It may not wear the badge you were expecting, but it will come. Because frequency doesn't lie, and heaven always responds to alignment. Let me end with this declaration. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are resonating. Your light is not hidden. It's traveling, and just like that woman with the alabaster jar, you don't need to announce your anointing. Your presence is enough. Your frequency is clear. Your spirit is speaking, and heaven is answering. Chosen one, you're not waiting for the blessing. You've become the frequency that draws it in. You're not chasing favor, you're attracting it. You're not begging for help, it's already on the way. Because you're glowing, you're aligned, you're resonating, you are shining, and heaven is responding. What if the very person you've been avoiding is the one God sent to bless you? What if the miracle you've prayed for is standing right in front of you, but it looks nothing like what you expected? Could your judgment be the wall blocking your own breakthrough? To chosen one, be careful not to reject the vessel just because you don't like the packaging. Throughout the Bible, and honestly throughout history, God has shown a very clear pattern. He rarely sends miracles in conventional form. The divine often arrives looking dusty, unexpected, unpolished, and completely out of place. Let's go back, deep into the book of Joshua. A story so uncomfortable, so counterintuitive, that most would have missed the miracle entirely had they relied on logic. The story of Rahab, when destiny dressed in disguise. Jericho was on high alert, the Israelites were near, and the city walls were fortified. Every citizen was watching for warriors, for spies, for intruders, and yet it wasn't a soldier or a prophet who held the key to God's plan. It was a prostitute, Rahab. A woman known not for her virtue but for her body. A name that, in her time, would have made holy men look away. But God saw a different story. When the two Israelite spies entered Jericho, Rahab didn't just hide them, she protected them, lied for them, risked her life for them. And in doing so, she became the unexpected linchpin in God's conquest strategy. Joshua 2:1-14 tells us how she made a deal. Swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family, because I have shown kindness to you. Let's be clear. Rahab didn't look like help. She looked like compromise. She looked like scandal. She looked like sin. But what the world calls unusable, God calls chosen. Let that marinate. Could it be that you've dismissed someone based on appearance, background, or religion, not knowing they carry your next breakthrough? How many times has God whispered answers through unlikely people, but you shut your ears because it didn't sound churchy enough? Let's fast forward to a woman gleaning scraps in someone else's field. Ruth, the foreigner with favor. She was a Moabite, a widow, a nobody. In Hebrew culture, that meant she was doubly disqualified, ethnically and socially. Yet she refused to abandon Naomi, her Jewish mother-in-law. She followed her to Bethlehem with no plan, no prospects, and no certainty. And as she picked up leftovers behind the reapers, Boaz noticed. He saw not just her beauty, but her devotion, her work ethic, her loyalty. What began as a random act of survival turned into a divine appointment, and Ruth became the great-grandmother of King David, in the lineage of Jesus himself. Tell me, if you were looking for the woman to carry royal lineage, would you have chosen a broke, barren foreigner in a barley field? Probably not, but God did. Now let's take a hard turn, one that's bound to stretch your mind and stir your spirit. The donkey that spoke. Yeah, you read that right. Numbers 22. Balaam, a prophet, was on a path that displeased God. So God sent an angel to block his way, but Balaam couldn't see it. His donkey, however, could. And when Balaam beat the donkey for stopping, the donkey spoke. God literally opened the mouth of a donkey to deliver a message. Why? Because when we won't listen to the obvious, God will use the absurd. Let that humble you. If God can use a donkey to save a prophet's life, why do we think he can't use a tattooed barista, a Muslim neighbor, a child with autism, or a recovering addict to speak life into us? Let's shift to your life now. You've been praying for signs, asking for help, crying for clarity, but are you listening with your spirit or just looking with your eyes? Because the divine rarely fits your checklist. It doesn't come with a title, a platform, or a spotless past. Sometimes it comes with dirt under its nails and stories that don't sound sanctified. And here's the danger: you will miss the supernatural if you demand it show up in the familiar. Let's pause here. Let's sit in the tension. Could your pride be blocking your provision? Could it be that you've rejected divine connections because they didn't fit your comfort zone? Let's be real. We want God to move, but we also want Him to move on our terms. And that's not faith. That's control dressed in religion. Here's your warning. Don't miss this. Heaven doesn't owe you a miracle in your preferred packaging. You may be praying for promotion and it shows up through the hands of a former enemy. You may be asking for healing and it's delivered by someone who doesn't speak your language. You may be seeking purpose and it's unlocked by a mentor who looks like your opposite. And if you're not careful, you'll dismiss the entire answer because the envelope doesn't match your expectations. Now, breathe. Let's ground this in love, because this isn't judgment, it's awakening. God isn't trying to trick you, He's trying to stretch you. He wants your spiritual discernment to grow so sharp that you can sense Him in the quiet, feel Him in the unfamiliar, and recognize Him in anyone. Because the moment you stop boxing in God is the moment you start experiencing Him in full color. Final moment. The wake-up call. Chosen one, let this truth settle into your bones. God has no obligation to use someone who looks like you, but He has every intention of using someone who's aligned with Him. And they may already be circling your life, watching, waiting, obeying a prompting they can't explain. They might not have wings, they might not quote scripture, they might not even believe they're qualified, but they're being stirred for you. So, what now? Open your spirit, widen your perception, train your eyes to look for fruit, not filters, because that person who looks wrong for the job might be the one heaven sent. And if you blink too fast, if you judge too soon, if you assume too much, you'll miss the very miracle you've been fasting for. Chosen one, don't miss the angel. Because they don't have wings. Don't silence the message because the messenger didn't arrive in robes. Don't walk away from the answer because it wasn't wrapped in your comfort zone. Stay awake, stay open, stay soft. Because the next person God sends might not fit your expectation, but they will carry your breakthrough. Let's keep going. This revelation is only getting deeper. What if the one you're waiting for is also waiting for you? What if your helper is in their own wilderness right now, being broken, built, and refined just like you? And what if your meeting won't happen until both of you are ready? Chosen one, this is not just your journey, this is a divine alignment of two purified souls. You felt it, that deep ache that someone is missing. Not a romantic fantasy, not a codependent need, but a sacred partnership. A collision of callings, a connection heaven has orchestrated, not for pleasure, but for purpose. But here's the truth most people miss. Before the connection happens, there's refinement, release judgment. And the fire isn't just for you, it's for them too. Let me take you to a prison cell in Egypt, where a man named Joseph sits, not for his crimes, but for his calling. He had dreams, prophetic ones, but his brothers hated him for it, threw him in a pit, sold him into slavery, lied to his father. Joseph was misjudged, mishandled, and misunderstood. But Genesis 39 says, "The Lord was with Joseph, even in the pit, even in the prison, even in the silence." And as Joseph waited, years passing like lifetimes, something was happening beyond the prison walls. A famine was coming. A Pharaoh would need a dream interpreted, and only Joseph would carry that key. But here's what most forget. Pharaoh too had to be refined. He had to be humbled, troubled by dreams he couldn't decipher, shaken out of comfort. Two men, different worlds, but both being prepared for a moment of holy collision. And so I ask you, chosen one, could it be that your delay isn't denial? It's divine synchronization. That while you've been praying for provision, God has been preparing the provider. That while you've been stretched in secret, they've been weeping in silence. Let me bring this closer to home. Madame C.J. Walker. She wasn't born a millionaire. She was born to former slaves. Orphaned at 7, married at 14, widowed at 20, working as a laundress for $1.50 a day. But the fire refined her. After losing her hair due to a scalp disorder, she began creating homemade remedies. She tested, she failed, she experimented, she prayed, and eventually she launched a hair care empire that not only changed her life, but lifted thousands of black women out of poverty. Now here's where it gets interesting. She didn't build alone. She needed partners, mentors, investors, people who believed in her vision before the world did. And guess what? Many of them were also going through their own fire. Before they could hold up her vision, they had to have their pride crushed, their motives purified, their faith tested, because God never lets unrefined hands hold sacred things. Here comes the turning point. You are sacred, and so is your assignment. So the person God is sending to you, the one who will open the door, carry the blessing, ignite the next season, must be refined enough not to fumble you. That's why it's taking time. Not because God forgot you, but because He's forging your partner in the same fire that's been shaping you. Take a breath, let this sink in. You're not the only one tired. You're not the only one pressing through the pain. You're not the only one losing sleep, wondering when the shift will come. Somewhere, maybe in a different city, maybe in a different country, someone is asking God the same question you are. When is the right time, Lord? Why do I feel the pull, but nothing is moving? And God is whispering to them what He's whispering to you. I'm not just preparing you. I'm preparing the one I've connected you to. Let's talk about Howard Schultz, the man who turned Starbucks from a small coffee shop into a global empire. He didn't come from wealth. He grew up in a housing project in Brooklyn, watching his father struggle, work unstable jobs, and be denied dignity over and over again. That pain became purpose. It forged his passion for employee benefits, healthcare, and workplace equality. And years later, when the opportunity came, he didn't just build a business. He built a mission, but he couldn't have done it alone. Investors had to believe in him, mentors had to support him, strategic doors had to open, and none of those happened by accident. They happened when alignment met refinement. So here's your reminder, chosen one. Just because you haven't met your connector yet doesn't mean they're not on the way. They're being softened, stripped of ego, purged of pride, trained in silence, humbled in secret. So when they arrive, they won't come to impress, they'll come to bless. This is where things get spiritual. Ecclesiastes 4:9 says, "Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor." But the truth behind that verse is this: two refined souls are unstoppable. Because when the broken meet the broken, but both have been healed by fire, there is no pride, no performance. And that's the kind of meeting heaven is setting up for you. Let me ask you this: are you willing to wait, not just for someone, but for the right one? The one who's been through enough to carry what you carry. Because shallow partnerships can't sustain deep callings. Unbroken people can't handle chosen ones, and rushed relationships will always resent sacred burdens. But when it's right, it flows, it aligns, it ignites. So what should you do now? Don't grow bitter in the wait. Don't assume you're being overlooked. And above all, don't lower your frequency to match convenience. Stay in the fire, because the one who's coming is still being refined. And when the moment comes, when your eyes meet, when the doors open, when the alignment is undeniable, you'll both know it wasn't chance. It was divine combustion. Chosen one. Hear this loud and clear. The connection of two souls refined in fire will always spark a spiritual explosion. And that moment? It's closer than you think. Keep preparing, keep refining, keep believing. Because what God is about to join together, no man can orchestrate, delay, or deny. Let's keep going. The fire has a purpose, and the purpose is about to manifest. What happens when the help finally arrives? What do you do when the very miracle you prayed for shows up in flesh and blood? Will you remember the source, or will you start worshipping the vessel? Chosen one. This is the test few talk about. Everyone teaches how to wait on the blessing, but no one warns you about what happens after the blessing comes. And make no mistake, when the help God promised shows up in your life, it will be breathtaking, precise, healing, exactly what you asked for, and more. But in that holy moment, when you feel overwhelmed by relief, rescued from despair, or elevated into destiny, you'll be faced with a silent decision. Will you cling to the vessel, or will you fall in worship to the God who sent it? Let me take you to a moment etched in Scripture, a powerful, haunting, and heartbreaking scene. Luke 17, 10 men, all lepers, their bodies rotting, their futures gone. They stood at a distance, crying out to Jesus, "Have mercy on us," and he did. With a word, he healed them all. 10 men, 10 lives restored. But only one came back to thank him. Let that shake you. 10 received, only one remembered the source. Jesus asks, were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Luke 17:17. He wasn't angry for giving, he was grieved they missed the deeper miracle. Gratitude isn't just politeness, it's spiritual perception. It's the awareness that what just happened was sacred and that it came from above, even if it arrived through human hands. Let's bring it forward to a classroom in Mississippi. A young black girl sits quietly, unsure of her worth. Her world tells her she is poor, voiceless, unseen, until one teacher, Mrs. Duncan, looks her in the eye and says, "You are special. You have something." That girl's name? Oprah Winfrey. And that moment, it didn't make Oprah, but it sparked a flame in her that God had already planted. Later, Oprah would become one of the most influential women in the world. And yes, she has always honored Mrs. Duncan, always credited her as a turning point. But Oprah didn't build an altar to her teacher. She built a life that gave glory to the source who used her. She understood this truth: honor the vessel, but never confuse it with the well. Let's pause here, reflect. Have you ever held on to someone so tightly you began to believe they were your source? that if they left, your calling would collapse, that if they walked away, your worth would walk with them. That's not honor, that's bondage. And God will never let you stay enslaved to the tools He uses, because when you idolize the vessel, you stop hearing the voice. Let me ask you something hard. What if the person who helped you disappears tomorrow? Would your faith collapse? Would your gratitude turn to bitterness? Would you question everything? Or would you remember that the same God who sent them can send another? Because, chosen one, God is your source. Not people, not platforms, not provision, not praise. People are assignments, instruments, conduits, and when their role is finished, they may step away, not because they failed, but because the mission moved. Here's the danger no one wants to admit. When you confuse help with holiness, you begin to serve people instead of God. You start adjusting your truth to keep their approval. You become afraid to grow without them. You build altars around gifts, forgetting the giver. But you were never meant to worship the well. You were meant to drink deeply and then move. Let me take you deeper. This is the shift. Your next blessing may come through a mentor, a CEO, a donor, a stranger with an open hand, and you should be grateful. You should honor them. You should thank them, bless them, speak life over them, but don't tether your soul to them. Don't let your faith depend on their favor, because the second your identity becomes entangled with your helper, you limit what heaven can release next. Hear this. You are not loved because someone helped you. You were loved long before they ever knew your name. The vessel that delivered the water did not create the spring. So, what should your posture be when help arrives? Gratitude, humility, discernment, and release. Gratitude, because heaven heard you. Humility, because you didn't earn it. Discernment, because the help may be temporary. Release, because your eyes are fixed on the source. Let me say this plainly. Don't build your faith on a person who was only meant to walk with you for a chapter. They may be faithful, they may be good, but they are not God. And the moment you start looking at them as your provider, God will step back. Not in anger, but in protection, because He loves you too much to let your spirit get hijacked by human praise. Here's the climax. Let it hit deep. The greatest trap of answered prayer is forgetting who answered it. And the fastest way to lose favor is to treat the gift like it's the source. So, when the help arrives, and it will, let your first instinct be worship, not attachment. Don't grip the vessel tighter than you cling to your God. Chosen one, this is the moment of spiritual maturity. You are about to be blessed in ways that will overwhelm you. But remember, the vessel may look like your miracle, but it is only holding what heaven poured. You may be tempted to bow, to over-honor, to obsess, to idolize, but resist it. Be grateful for the jar, but don't forget the water came from the well. Let me leave you with this. God will send help in many forms. Some will stay, some will pass through, but no matter who it is, the glory always belongs to Him. So when your help shows up, say thank you. Say hallelujah. Say, Lord, I see you. And then say this to your soul. I'm grateful for the vessel, but I will never forget the well. Let's keep going. The source still has more to pour. What if your miracle doesn't come with a spotlight? What if your breakthrough doesn't announce itself with noise, but with stillness? Would you even notice it? Or would you miss it because you expected something louder? Chosen one, let this settle into your spirit. God doesn't always shout. Sometimes He whispers. And if your heart isn't still, if your soul isn't alert, if your mind is distracted by noise and your expectations are tangled in your ego, you will walk past what heaven sent, thinking it was nothing at all. That's how subtle God's moves can be. That's how sacred His timing is. That's how spiritually awake you must become. Let's go to the cave, to the edge of despair, to a prophet hiding in fear, Elijah. He had just called down fire from heaven, confronted false prophets, experienced one of the most public demonstrations of God's power in the Old Testament, and yet now he's hiding, alone, afraid, suicidal, because sometimes the next test comes right after the last triumph. In 1 Kings 19, Elijah retreats to Mount Horeb, and God tells him, "Stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." So Elijah waits, and then a mighty wind tears through the mountain. But God isn't in the wind. An earthquake shakes the rocks, but God isn't in the earthquake. A fire blazes through the silence, but God isn't in the fire. Then came a gentle whisper, and Elijah knew this was God. Let that convict you. How many times have you looked for the miracle in the big, the dramatic, the extraordinary, and missed the whisper? How many times have you ignored the nudge, the passing thought, the small act of kindness, because it didn't look supernatural enough? But that's the mystery of God. He often hides glory inside simplicity. Now hear this, the help that's coming to you, it may not knock loud, it may not wear a name tag, it may not quote scripture or wave a flag. It may show up in a passing word, a stranger's smile, an email at midnight, a door that doesn't look special until you walk through it. And if you're not spiritually awake, you'll label it coincidence instead of calling. Let's go to Hosea 2:14. "Therefore, I am now going to allure her. I will lead her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her." God doesn't always shout over the noise of your life. Sometimes He leads you into isolation so you can finally hear Him. Not to punish you, but to prepare you. That wilderness you've been walking through, the silence that felt like abandonment, it was heaven turning down the volume of the world so you could hear the whisper of direction, of timing, of divine help. Let me paint this picture clearly. You've been waiting for a miracle, but the miracle isn't coming in thunder, it's coming in timing. It's coming in nuance, it's coming in sensitivity, the kind that only comes when your spirit is tuned to the frequency of heaven. And this is why the enemy wants you distracted, because if he can keep your ears full of gossip, fear, anxiety, and noise, you'll miss the frequency of your own deliverance. Here comes the warning. If you are not spiritually alert, you will mislabel the sacred. You'll call divine moments coincidence. You'll dismiss holy people as irrelevant. You'll overlook help because it doesn't look like help. You'll stay in drought because you didn't recognize the rain when it came in mist instead of storm. Chosen one, this is not about fear. It's about readiness. You're not being left behind. You're being invited into deeper discernment. Here's the truth no one tells you. God won't always repeat Himself. Sometimes you get one whisper, one nudge, one door slightly cracked open, and it's your job, your responsibility to walk through in faith. Let me take you into a modern story. Quiet, ordinary, but divine. A young woman had been praying for direction, for purpose, for something to shift. Every day felt the same, mundane. Until one evening, at a bookstore, she struck up a conversation with a stranger. A simple comment, a shared laugh, a business card exchanged. That conversation would lead to a job offer she never applied for. That job would lead to a mission trip. That mission trip would introduce her to her life's calling. And it all began with a whisper. Not a revival, not a prophetic word from a stage, but a simple, subtle invitation that only discernment could recognize. So now I ask you, are you awake enough to notice your miracle when it comes wrapped in the ordinary? Are you close enough to God to recognize His voice when it sounds like silence? Are you present enough in your spirit to know when it's time to move, even if nothing around you looks different? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. The supernatural rarely looks supernatural at first. It looks like Ruth gleaning in Boaz's field. It looks like David carrying lunch to the battlefield. It looks like Mary saying yes in a quiet room no one saw. It looks like you showing up faithfully in the dry places until the whisper comes. Let's close this chapter with clarity. Chosen one. You're not waiting for a sign. You're waiting for stillness. You're not waiting for drama. You're waiting for discernment. What God is sending you will not be noisy. It won't beg for your attention. It will slip in quietly, and only the awake will recognize it. So what should you do? Stay present. Stay humble. Quiet the noise. Protect your peace. Sharpen your ears. Strengthen your discernment. Because when it comes, and it is coming, you won't need a trumpet. You won't need a sign in the sky. You won't need anyone to explain it, because your soul will know. The whisper will be enough. The wind will carry His voice, and you'll recognize that what just walked into your life wasn't random. It was God. Softly, surely, strategically. Chosen one, miracles don't always shout, but your spirit knows the sound of heaven. Stay ready, because a miracle doesn't need to be loud. Your soul will know. Let's keep walking. The whisper is getting closer. Have you ever felt like God was late? Like everyone around you was moving forward while your life stayed still? Like your prayers were floating into the void, unanswered, unacknowledged, unseen? Chosen one, let me tell you something holy and true. God was never late. He was just being precise. You were never abandoned. You were being positioned. You were never invisible to heaven. You were just in the process of becoming. Let me take you to a night in Gethsemane. Jesus on His knees, blood like sweat, silence thick with agony. Even the Son of God had to go through silence before resurrection. Even He had to endure the stillness before the glory. Why? Because the deeper the destiny, the darker the preparation. You too have walked through Gethsemane moments, nights you didn't think you'd survive, days that stripped you bare, seasons where the only sound was your own heartbeat in the dark. And yet, you're still here, breathing, believing, becoming. Do you understand how powerful that is? Your survival is not random, it's strategic. Every moment you didn't quit was a declaration in the Spirit. I'm still waiting, Lord. I still believe. And now, the time of waiting is shifting. Chosen one, hear me. Help is already in motion. The person you've never met, they're on assignment. The doors you couldn't force open, they're unlocking. The silence you feared, it's making way for the sound of breakthrough. It's coming quietly, but it's coming quickly. And when it arrives, it will feel like peace, not pressure. It will feel like alignment, not anxiety. But you must stay awake. Let me tell you what's happening in the Spirit right now. Someone is being stirred. Someone is feeling a pull, a prompting, a name whispered in the night, your name. They may not know why, but heaven does. Because when God decides it's time, no system, no delay, no demon in hell can stop what's been ordained. That's why you had to endure. That's why the fire had to burn. That's why the silence was allowed. You weren't being forgotten. You were being fortified. And now you are ready. Not perfect, not polished, but ready. Ready to receive without idolizing. Ready to walk through the door without dragging old pain. Ready to embrace help without losing your identity in who brings it. This is your moment. Let me speak this loud into your soul. You will not miss what God has assigned to you. You will not sabotage it. You will not be late for it. You will not be bypassed. Because what God releases is always marked with your name in the Spirit. So when it arrives, don't hesitate. Don't overthink. Don't downplay yourself. Step into it. Claim it. Live it. You've earned this moment through private obedience. You've carried this assignment in silence. You've bled behind closed doors. Now it's time to rise. Let's go deeper. Let's go practical. Here's what you need to do right now. Like this message, if it's speaking to the part of you that's been waiting. Share this video, because someone else is praying the same prayer. Comment 777 below. If you feel the divine agreement stirring in your spirit, pray tonight, not for more help, but for readiness to receive. Live with expectation. Walk like someone who knows heaven is moving. This isn't a performance. This is a prophetic activation. Let me remind you one last time. You are the one. You were chosen. You were set apart before your mother knew your name. And now the help, the alignment, the moment, it's moving toward you faster than you think. So you don't have to chase, you don't have to beg, you don't have to manipulate. You just have to stay in position. Because may your help reach you faster than expected. And when it does, remember this. It's not luck, it's legacy. It's not random, it's written. It's not a coincidence, it's confirmation. Chosen one, you made it through the fire. You've been refined, not destroyed. Prepared, not passed over. Anointed, not abandoned. So stand tall, open your heart, look around, because the answer you've been praying for is already on the way. You are chosen, and the help is on its way. Now go, live like it, speak like it, believe like it, and we'll see you in the next revelation.